Guys, welcome back to the weekly outlook and reviews. We're going to go through 10 pairs as usual, and as always say at the start of any video, if you do enjoy the content, please don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on notifications. So we're going to go over 10 pairs today. Firstly, looking at DXY, New Zealand dollar, pound USD, euro yen, CAD yen, Aussie dollar yen, USD CAD, gold, euro New Zealand dollar and dollar yen. So the first pair we'd like to look at today is the dollar index. Now we can see that price came to a very strong level on the market, potentially overbought at 98.31. We can see that it tested it for a few days before finally coming back and making its rally to the downside. Now we can see that the dollar obviously is weak at the moment in terms of what's happening in China with the trade wars. And we can continue to expect some continued down movement, I reckon, going forward next week. Now, looking at the structure, we are clearly breaking previous structure lows with no hesitation whatsoever. We have our first push to the downside with our slight exhaustion, making our new lower high of this new structure. We had no problems smashing through this 96.82 level here, breaking the second structural low, and now making a new lower low on this formation. So my expectation moving forward as of next week is a slight exhaustion back into structure, looking to create a new lower high. Before then we have this continued move to the downside. Right now it's in a push phase, so I'll be waiting for this push phase to end and then start to show signs of its exhaustion, creating new structural lower highs, potentially coming back into previous support / resistance, and then see this continued move to the downside. The next pair that we'll take a look at is New Zealand dollar USD. Now what we can see with this pair is we've had this strong wave to the downside and making a lower low, lower high formation, indicating that the sellers were really in control of this market. Now we came to these major levels looking to the left, we don't see too much structure, so we probably could see that this market is oversold. Now we don't really go off indicators, so we're just using this information as technical analysis, looking at this as a structural low and potential first high low of the structure. Now what's evident with this market structure is we have clear bulls in the market, so we don't really want to be selling against them. If we're going to have confirmation of a potential sell-buy structure here, then we're just going to wait for price to exhaust and then continue its possible move to the upside. Now, I do see more up potential with this pair. I think we need to wait for a little bit more evidence. And the evidence that I'll be looking for on this pair is a slight pullback into structure, making a new high low before we have this continuation to the upside. If this resistance level holds and we see price starting to push back to the downside, then we'll potentially be looking for more sells once price starts to create new lower high structure. For now, we're at a pivotal area on the market. We'll wait patiently. I'm expecting some up moves, so we'll wait for the exhaustion and see if we can get in with a good stop loss and potential good risk reward ratio. Remember, our main focus is to be looking for good stop losses with good risk to reward. What we do is we take a trade, we win, we lose, we lose. But the most important thing is try to manage our trade as soon as possible so that we can increase our chances moving forward when we take our next trades to not be counter or trying to catch back up with the deficit of our losses, but rather accumulate in our account, and as we call that, compounding. So that's New Zealand dollar USD. The third pair I'd like to look at is pound USD. Now this overall structure is clearly bearish. We can see that we went through a very long period of upward movement in the market where the pound was pretty strong. And now I'm expecting more weakness in the pound. We can start to see that price has finally broken this trend line to the upside. We can now see that price has pulled back, retesting that pretty perfectly and to the T. And now we've had the strong wave to the downside, making its first structural lower high, breaking the previous structures to the left with no problems whatsoever. Now we've come back into this strong resistance zone here, making a double top of the structure. So it'll be very interesting to see how price starts to react in and around this area. If this is going to be our structural lower high, and this is our exhaustion phase on this market, then I'm expecting more down movement. And of course, we'll be looking for that, depending obviously on your understanding of the market. So the next pair that we'd like to look at will be Euro Yen. So with Euro Yen, I can clearly see that our price was in a sideways moving market for a very long period of time. Now we can see that price kept bouncing off around 126.70 and rallying back to the downside around 123.66. Now, price was moving sideways for a very long period of time. If we just calculate this or measure it, should I say, around 120 days. We finally now have broken back to the downside, which is obviously indicating to us that sellers are in the market. Now, based on the information after the break, we've had a perfect retest of this previous structural support, term resistance, and now we've had this continued push to the downside, breaking previous structural lows. Based on that information, I'll be expecting price to pull back, making a new structural lower high, potential retest of this resistance zone before then we have a continuation to the downside. Right now, I'd wait patiently for the sell opportunity to develop, and obviously, depending on your strategy, look to get in with a safe stop loss, and then we'll see if we hit our TPs on Euro Yen. But my overall bias is down, just waiting for the information to enter this trade. The next pair we'll take a look at is CAD Yen. Pretty similar structure, but what we'll see here on CAD Yen is that price is making structural lower highs. Now, this is obviously evidence to us that sellers are in the market. We clearly have our stepping down formation, and what we can see now is price is clearly broken below its previous structure level, coming back in to make a new structural lower high, and now we have this push to the downside. So right now I view this as a corrective structure or an exhaustion phase in the market, where I'll now be expecting price to either come back to its previous resistance or make a new lower high formation before we continue this rally to the downside. So that's my analysis on CAD Yen. The next pair that I'll take a look at is Aussie Dollar Jpy. Now, I can see this structure has clearly broken its previous support around 77.55. Now, there's not too much to write home about on this one, but what I'll be looking for in this pair is a clear pullback into some of these resistance levels. At the moment, price is a bit stagnant. There's not much volume in this market at the moment in terms of liquidity. So what I'll be looking for is to see price starting to push back to the upside, and then be looking for break of the previous channel or potential lower high formation before then looking for my sell opportunity. Whereabouts we'll be able to get this entry, I'm not too sure. It could be here, it could be up here, it could be up here, but I'm not expecting price to continue all the way back to the upside as of yet. I'm still looking for some more downward movement on Aussie Dollar JPY, so we'll wait patiently for that to develop moving forward. The next pair that we'll take a look at is USDCAD. Now, we can clearly see the dollar weakness again here. We can see that the Canadian dollar has now taken over this market. We did have a strong push to the upside for a very, very long period of time, but we can clearly see that the opposing currency is not messing about. Now, price has not only topped out in and around these levels here, we can see the volume, we can see the liquidity, we can see the momentum in this market. So I don't expect this to shift anytime soon. What I'll be looking for is for price just to give us an exhaustion phase back into some of these previous support / resistance, and then look for this continuation move back to the downside. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out as of next week. I would just be patiently waiting for this exhaustion based on the structure to look for continued sells back to the downside. The next pair that I like to look at is gold. Now, we can clearly see gold is just doing a whole heap of things right now. If you can see with the structure, we don't have one red candle. We had an attempt by the bears to find its resistance around 13.45, but unfortunately the bull said no. With this overall structure of this market, I am, of course, waiting for price to exhaust to give a possible re-entry on this trade to look to fight back to the upside. And if this doesn't happen, then I'm just simply waiting for price to show signs of bullish behavior, break this resistance area on the market, and then look for a continuation up. My overall bias on gold is up, and I don't think that will change anytime soon. In terms of sell opportunities, there's not going to be really a rush to get into this market. Once price starts to show signs that the bears, or should I say the bulls, are losing control, I'll just be waiting for price to either exhaust for the continuation up, looking for a safe entry, safe stop loss below structure, and then be able to manage it into break even as soon as possible. And if not, then we'll be looking for price to make its first structural high, lower high, before then we have the continuation to the downside. But you want my overall bias is up, and I think we'll still have some continued up movement as of next week. So we'll see what happens with that. The next pair we'll take a look at is Euro New Zealand dollar. Now, we can clearly see this formation on this chart. We've come into around 72.03, and we can see prices starting to roll over. Now, for me, that's a sign that we're looking for more continued downward movement in this market. We have our structural high, we have our lower high, we have our potential lower high here breaking these previous support zones, Now I'll just be looking for price to pull back, exhaust, whatever you want to call it, before we have this continuation to the downside. The range that I'll be looking at is from where price is at now back to 67.14. And this is the area in the market where I expect price to find some sort of resistance. We're talking about 320 pips here. So to look for 40 to 60 pips ain't too shabby within this range itself. So I'm looking for more downward movement on Euro New Zealand dollar as of next week. The final pair that I'll be looking at is dollar yen. This to me is clearly down. We've had this very, very, very strong trend line moving to the upside for a very long period of time. From where price found its first resistance to where it ended, it was around 121 days. And now we can clearly see that the bears are in control of this market. Again, this is a sign of the weak dollar at the moment. We're making our structural level highs, our structural lower highs, breaking of previous structure lows, and now we've made our new lower low. With this structure, I'll be looking for a pullback, looking for an exhaustion on this market before we have a continuation to the downside. Looking for potential ranges, you could be looking on your weekly or monthly time frame, but as of now, I'm not too fussed about it. We have a wick potentially that could be filled, but for now, my focus will be looking for the exhaustion on this pair before we have the continuation to the downside. So that's our 10 pairs. I hope you enjoyed the analysis this week. And again, as I say, enjoy your week, trade safe, and until next time, catch you later.